Welcome to all you out there in Cyberland this Tuesday morning, April 14th. The time is 7:30 a.m. We give these Srimad Bhagavatam classes Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at this time. We also give a class on Saturday night at 7 o'clock, a more seeker-friendly class Sundays at 5:30, and we have the Krishna Light Show, which comes on Sundays at 1 o'clock. So what is that? That's probably, here we are. Okay, I assume that we're still live, just went off the air for a second. Yeah, just wave if you can see us. I'll wave to Thomas, Mala, and Terry. All right, good morning. How's everything in Idaho? Is it crisp and clear, just like it is here? So we're in the 22nd verse, first chapter, first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is a classic verse. Tvam nasandashito datta dishtaram nisakalim satpa harim pumsham karna dada hivarnanam. Sunaka's greeting Sutta Goswami into the assembly of sages at Naimisharanya with these words, among others. He says, "We think that we have met your grace by the will of providence, just so that we may accept you as captain of the ship for those who desire to cross the difficult ocean of the Kali Yuga age, which deteriorates all the good qualities of a human being. The age of Kali is very dangerous for this is the purport, I think, yeah. The age of Kali is very dangerous for the human being. Human life is simply meant for self-realization. But due to this dangerous age, men have completely forgotten the aim of life. In this age, the lifespan will gradually decrease. People will lose their memories. They'll lose their finer sentiments, strength, and better qualities. Thus, this age is very difficult for those who want to utilize it for self-realization. The people are so busy with sense gratification that they completely forgot about self-realization. Out of madness, they frankly say that there is no need for self-realization because they do not realize that this brief life is but a moment on our great journey towards self-realization. The whole system of education is geared to sense gratification, and if a learned man thinks it over, he sees that the children of this age are being intentionally sent to the slaughterhouses of so-called education. Learned men, therefore, must be cautious of this age. And if they at all want to cross over the dangerous ocean of Kali Yuga, they must follow the footsteps of the sages of Naimisharanya and accept Sri Sutta Goswami, or his bona fide representative, as the captain of the ship. The ship is the message of Lord Krishna in the shape of Bhagavad Gita, or the Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, I just want to start off by referencing the original verse, which describes this human body as the ship, the Vedic hymns as the favorable breezes, and the Guru as the captain of the ship. This comes from the 11th canto, and it's directly enunciated by Lord Krishna himself. The Supreme Lord said, "The best of bodies, a human body, is a great attainment, rarely achieved, and may be compared to a boat. The Guru is an expert captain for this boat, and I have sent," this is God speaking, "favorable winds in the form of the Vedas. Thus I have given all facilities for crossing over the ocean of material existence. Any human being who has achieved these excellent facilities of human life, but does not cross over the material ocean, is to be considered a killer of his self." So when Prabhupada references this analogy, he repeats the words of the Lord that neglecting to take advantage of the opportunity of the Vedas is a favorable breeze. This human body, rarely achieved as the proper boat to cross over the ocean, and the Guru is the captain. One who neglects these facilities is committing spiritual suicide. Prabhupada says that, or is the killer of the soul. And these sound like pretty strong statements, but we're not saying them. Krishna himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is categorically saying that anyone who neglects the human form of life and all the facilities that are given to it in order to pursue sense gratification like the animals is committing spiritual suicide. So we're devotees of Krishna. And so if Krishna says something, we repeat it, even if you get mad at us for doing that. We're okay with that because we want to represent Krishna and we want to represent him fully. And so there are times when Krishna is quite outspoken. And the reason he's outspoken is because he wants us back home, back to Godhead. And some of us are more recalcitrant than others. So just like a parent has a child that won't cooperate, won't follow, won't listen to good advice which is going to improve the quality of this child's life. And so sometimes out of love, the parent will get a little insistent and raise their voice, speak a little more frankly. And it's just in order to do whatever, move heaven and earth to try and get that child on a track to a better, more higher life. So Krishna can whisper from within us. He can appear to us through sagacious scripture. He is the guru, the Chaita guru within the heart. He's the external guru who appears before us. But when all friendly talks are over, sometimes Krishna has to be a little harsh, and all he's trying to do is get your attention. So we start off this morning's class by saying that the imperative of the human form of life is to get self-realization, to finish up the cycle of birth, death, disease, and old age, and go back to home, back to Godhead. And if you fail to do that, you're committing spiritual suicide. And that's not coming from us, that's coming from Krishna himself. So in the purport to this verse, which Lord Krishna himself spoke in the 11th canto, Prabhupada continues. Human form of life is so valuable that Brahma is the creator of the universe. He's not God. Some people mistake Brahma for being God because he's the creator of the universe. And most people, when they think of God, they think of God as the creator of the universe because they don't know that there's millions and millions of universes. They don't know that there's millions and millions of Brahmas. And so they think that there's only one universe, and so therefore the creator of this universe must be God, which is not a fact. Brahma himself says, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigrahana Dhira Govinda Savakarana Karana. The supreme controller, who is the controller over me, and not only me, but millions and millions of universes and millions of Brahmas, who has a body full of Satchidananda, a body of knowledge, bliss, and eternity, Anadira Dhira Govinda Savakarana Karanam. He is the cause of all causes. Brahma himself was caused by Krishna. He came out of a lotus flower, and he was animated and instructed and empowered to create the universe by none other than Krishna. But Krishna himself has no cause. So Brahma is freely admitting here that, I didn't have the wherewithal to create the universe. I got that Shakti from Krishna. Brahma is freely admitting here that I don't have a Satchidananda body, although Brahma's body is made of much more subtle matter. It's much more refined than ours to the point that he lives for. Are you sitting down? Brahma, the creator of the universe, lives for about 311 trillion years. So obviously his material body is not of the same gross constitution as ours. It's much subtle matter, by virtue of which he can live for literally trillions of years. But he's saying that there's a limit, there's a definition to my powers, there's a definition to my longevity. And Lord Krishna further clarifies that in 16th verse, 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Abrahma bhuvana loka parnarvatina mamupeti tukantiya parnarjanmana vidyate. It says from the highest planet, from the planet of Lord Brahma himself, down to the lowest, they're all places of repeated birth and death. So that's the extent of Brahma's power, that's the extent of Brahma's longevity, and he himself worships Lord Krishna. And Brahma, from his point of view as a demigod, one who is enjoying the fruits of pious activities in previous lives, as a demigod, and we mentioned long lifespan, much higher standard of living, bodies which are hardly touched by old age and disease, births which are not characterized by 9 months packed in a womb being bitten by little parasites and worms. No. Demigods, if it could be said that material life is enjoyable, then the demigods are living the life. They're living it large. Even if they have to die eventually. But even their birth and death is not as miserable as ours. And with all that facility, and all of that endowment, and all that abundance, getting everything that there is on the highest level to be had from the material creation, Brahma says that if he could take birth in the human form on earth, he would do it in a second. The human form is so rare and valuable that not only is it unique amongst all the 8,400,000 species of life, but even amongst the demigods themselves hanker after taking birth in a human form. Why? Because it's the portal to finish up birth, death, and disease in this material world and go back home, back to Godhead. Someone may say, well, can't the demigods do that? Well, many of the demigods, at the end of their lives, they go back home, back to Godhead, but that's not going to be for hundreds of thousands of years. You can do it in this life, in the next 40 or 50 years. You can make this birth your last birth and go back to home, back to Godhead. Example is Dhruva Maharaj. Dhruva Maharaj became God-realized, and he was awarded a planet which he would rule over for 60,000 years. You'd think he'd be happy if he was a materialist, but by then he was totally Krishna consciousness, and he was somewhat chagrined. He was saying, I have to stay here, even as a demigod, for another 60,000 years? What was I thinking? So Brahma and the demigods would switch out for a human body because the human body is the best platform within this material world for going back home, back to Godhead. So continuing here in the purport, it is said that the human form is a great boon because it is the most suitable boat for crossing the Nescience Ocean. The spiritual master is considered to be the most able captain in the boat, and the information from the scriptures is the favorable wind for floating. Over the the information from the scriptures is the favorable wind for floating over the ocean of nescience. Again, we come up with this. The human being who does not take advantage of all these facilities in his life is committing suicide. And therefore, one who does not begin Krishna conscious in the human form of life loses his life to the influence of material energy. Brahma regrets the situation of such a human being. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, I remember reading also, failing to take advantage of the human form of life for self-realization is called tragic. Tragic. It would be tragic, wouldn't it, if you had a valuable diamond worth tens of thousands of dollars and you mistook it for glass. Wouldn't that not be tragic, especially if you were poor and homeless, living in a shopping cart, and in that shopping cart, wrapped in a little cloth pouch, you had the most valuable diamond, but you didn't recognize it for what it was, and so you're living on the street in a tent, in a culvert somewhere, when you could be living free of misery, totally comfortable. And so similarly, taking this human form of life for sense gratification is kind of like that. Rishabh says, Nayam deha deha brijan lu. Nayam deha deha bhajan rinoke kastan karmana te vid bujan ye. You've got this human form of life, which is a suitable boat. Get yourself a spiritual master. Be guided by his instructions and scriptures and go back home, back to Godhead. But instead, you use the valuable and rare human form of life, which even the demigods covet, for pursuing the same pleasures as the dogs and the hogs. Caru, you're not comparing me to a dog and a hog, are you? I drive a BMW. I sleep in a waterbed. I eat at the best restaurants, and I defend myself with nuclear weapons, tanks, artillery. Yeah, I am. Maybe polished, but nevertheless, the priorities are non-different from those of the animals. The priorities of the animal are eating, sleeping, mating, defending. So you may have sex in a waterbed with all kinds of stimuli, but it's still just sex. The feeling of semen ejaculating is the same feeling that the pig gets, that the hog gets, that the dog gets. And frankly, they don't have to go to as much trouble. They just do their thing right out in public, right out in the middle of the street. They don't have to give flowers or candy, sit bored out of their minds through a chick flick in order to get lucky. So why use the valuable human form of life to pursue the same pleasures which are actually more easily available for the dogs and the hogs? And in fact, talk about committing suicide. Whatever it is that you're thinking at the time of death, and if you cultivate, say, promiscuity throughout your whole life, you've opted out for unrestricted sense gratification, you have that madness, ignoring your better interest for self-realization and simply trying to become a better version of a hog or a dog. If that's how your mind is predicated, then it says at the time of leaving your body, then you're going to get really lucky, my friend. Yes, you're going to get really, really lucky. Because in your next life, you are going to get the body of a hog or a dog, and you will have committed spiritual suicide. And you can get material sense gratification much more easily. It's much more readily available in those lower subhuman forms. But it will be a while before you rise again to the human platform and get another chance. And hopefully when that happens, you'll have learned your lesson and take the human form of life more seriously. But in the meantime, it's going to be a long time, my friend, before you come to the human platform again. Now let me just address one question which may be coming up in the minds of someone who's just intersecting Krishna consciousness. Do animals get karma? Do demigods get karma? Obviously, to take a subhuman birth means that you're working off or burning off the results of negative, not ideal choices that you made in the human form of life. So the answer is no, the animals don't accrue any new karma. They're just basically burning off the ill results of bad choices in the human form of life. The demigods is the flip side of the coin. The demigods have used the human form of life for cultivating sense gratification in a more shrewd way. The scriptures never condone sense gratification, but they do say that if you do want sense gratification and you do it under certain conditions, you do it restrictedly in the human form of life, and at the same time you offer sacrifices, you give in charity, philanthropy, then you can elevate yourself in the next life to a position of a demigod. So by exercising self-restraint and following scriptural injunctions for your sense gratification in the human form of life, then you get a lot of punya, you get a lot of sense gratification on a more higher level, and you get a longer lifespan with which to enjoy it. But the answer is the same as it is for the animals. You don't accrue any karma, either in the subhuman form or the superhuman form. You're just burning it off. The animal's burning off negative karma. The demigod is burning off positive karma. Which is why both the demigods and the animals are more or less disqualified from seriously pursuing self-realization. It's a unique prerogative of the human form of life. But if instead of doing that, we neglect that, we become nonam pramata kurute vikarma, also from Rishabh, says those who are mad after sense gratification. It is said that the boat is a human form. So to keep the boat seaworthy, to make sure the boat is pliable, to make sure the boat can cross the ocean without springing holes or getting waterlogged or sinking, there are 4 restraints which are recommended for the spiritual aspect. No illicit sex, no gambling, no intoxication, and no meeting. Those are the first things that the captain of the ship, the guru, will tell you to do to keep your boat sound from springing leaks. So instead of keeping the boat of this human body, this God-given body, boat, our most valuable asset amongst all the species of life, including the demigods, instead of keeping it seaworthy and sound, we go out and drink and smoke and eat meat and chase women. That means instead of having a good boat that floats on top of the ocean buoyantly, you have made of your human body like a boat of stone. So you're launching from the shore. The idea is to cross the dangerous ocean of the Kali Yuga, and you're doing it with a stone boat. Not only that, you can see you're doomed already because of all the pollutants putting into this body, all the ways that you've compromised the seaworthiness of this human form. You can see you're doomed already. Not only that, then, we take as the captain of the boat in this Kali Yuga age of quarrel and hypocrisy, we take the captain as some blind leader who's nothing more than a big animal. So we're meant to cross this vast and dangerous ocean, and we make of our boat like a boat of stone, and we accept as a captain Shravid Varashtakari Samstuta, a big hog, dog, camel, or ass. And these so-called leaders and politicians, they're only too willing to say, yeah, follow me, everybody get on the boat. Yeah, we're gonna go to a great place and enjoy it. I'll fulfill all your desires, and you just follow me and vote for me. Everybody get on the boat, you know. I can see what we're doing, I can see where we're going. Actually, he's blind. There's no more vision than the animal, the cat or the dog. But he's pretending to be able to see. He's pretending to be able to lead people in the right direction, but because the people themselves are blind, they cannot detect that the leader himself is also blind. He's able to spoof them. Says, I can see, just follow me. Nate vidu shvartagadim. So when blind people follow blind leaders, what happens? They sink. They sink. They don't get very far across the ocean. Here Prabhupada says, one who boards a boat made of stone is doomed. To be elevated to the stage of perfection, humanity must first give up false leaders who present boats of stone. And thus one will board a boat of stone which will sink and drown all its passengers. All of human society is in such a dangerous position that to be rescued, it must abide by the standard instructions of the Vedas. The cream of these instructions appears in the form of the Bhagavad Gita. And what is the final conclusive instruction of the Bhagavad Gita? Sarvadhanam parityaga mame kamsana ahamtam sarvapapi mokshasi masur. Give up all these bad habits. Give up all these tyrannical, egocentric, narcissistic, false leaders, and just surrender unto me. Just put ourselves in the hands of the Almighty. Not in the hands of Allstate, but put ourselves in the hands of the Almighty. And don't have any fear. You'll not lose anything by living a pure spiritual life, by aiming towards self-realization and following a bona fide representative of your loving Father who wants ultimate liberation for you. You'll not be the loser. Aham tam sarva mokshasi masujaha. Don't have any doubt, don't have any hesitation. This is the far better choice. This is the only choice in the human form of life. It's the only choice. Someone says, well, it calls for surrender. That makes me nervous. Yeah, well, if you're surrendering to the current political leader, you're surrendering to some materialistic person, that you should be nervous. because they're only out for their own self-interest. But it's an entirely different thing when you're surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead or His bona fide representative. Consider this. When you go on a cruise ship during normal times, let's put aside all the current bad news about cruise ships and coronavirus, but let's go back or go forward. When you board a cruise ship going to some exotic place, like the islands of the Caribbean, St. Thomas, you surrender. There are things that you cannot do on a cruise ship. You can't speed on the freeway. You can't fly. So you give up certain things in order to board the cruise ship. And also when you're on the cruise ship, everybody recognizes that you have to follow the captain. And it has nothing to do with the captain's self-interest. It has everything to do with the self-interest of everybody who's on the boat. The captain is working for you, and he has superior knowledge and navigational skills to get you to this wonderful, exotic destination that you want to go to. So you need to trust the captain, and your trust will never be misplaced. He's got the training, he's got the skills, he's got your best interests at heart. Just like the head. Right now I have this cut on my hand. I don't know how I got it. But as soon as there's a cut and there's a chance of infection, that the body is in danger, the body is jeopardized by this cut, my head immediately goes to work. The head doesn't think, okay, how can I separate myself from the cut? If something bad happens to the cut, how can I get detached from the body and buffer myself, How can I head for the hills? No, head's not wired that way. Head's wired to think, how can I cure the cut and protect the well-being of the whole body? That's what the head does. If there's any cut or injury or illness anywhere else in the body, the head meditates day and night how to cure that and restore the entire organism back to a wholesome, healthy, functional state of being. So similarly, the captain of the ship is not self-interested. He has trained, he has studied, he has experience to get you to where you need to go in the safest way. So if you're a crew member or a passenger, you need to accept the captain pretty much as the sole and supreme authority. And that will be in your best interest. If you don't do that, if there's voting and partisanship and sectarianism, mutinies, that's the worst thing, right? You're at sea and a mutiny. Everybody's read Mutiny on the Bounty, and it was not a happy story. Of course, that captain was nutcase and self-interested, but he's unusual, the exception rather than the rule. Now, here's another point. If you get on the boat, or rather you have the boat, which is the human form, but you keep it seaworthy, and you accept the captain, the representative of Krishna, the bona fide guru, who's well conversant with the scriptures, just like the captain knows the tides and he knows the breezes. He knows the tides and he knows the breezes. So the spiritual master knows the Vedic scriptures, which are like the favorable breezes, the trade winds. The scriptures are like the trade winds, which are going to get you to where you want to go. So we want to go from this world of birth, death, disease, and old age, which affects even Brahma, to that world where there's no birth, no death, no disease, and no age. What is it? Mritu mam amritam gaya, tamasho mam jyotir gamaya, sad asad jadka, sad yad asad gamaya. We want to go from the world of death to the world of immortality, from the temporary world to the permanent world. We want to go from the world of darkness to the world of light. That's what the human boat, human form of life, is for. The guru is meant to be the navigational guide who's familiar with the Vedic favorable winds to get us there. So we've got everything we need to go from darkness to light, from death to immortality, from the temporary world to the eternal world. Now, here's the icing on the cake, okay? The ship, the journey is, you don't have to do penances and austerities. You don't have to wear a hair shirt. You don't have to flagellate yourself. You don't even have to do yoga. You just chant, dance, sing. Discuss philosophy, chant, dance, sing, eat, discuss philosophy, repeat, chant, dance, sing, discuss philosophy, repeat. It's going back to home, back to Godhead under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. It's like going on a cruise ship with all amenities. It's fun. It's recreational. The journey itself is so much fun. I had traveled the world as a young man. Before meeting devotees in 1970, I'd been traveling for about 3 years. I first left America. The Vietnam War was raging, and so I just thought best to be somewhere else than in America, because everybody was divided. The doves and the hawks were having pot shots at each other, kind of reminiscent of now, only not quite as vituperative in those days, but there was sectarian and divisiveness. And so I thought this would be a good time to take a gap year and travel. It ended up being 8 years, 5 years in Krishna consciousness and 3 years prior to meeting the devotees. So I went to Scotland. I spent time in England. I went to the Canary Islands. I hitchhiked through Spain. I spent 6 months in Paris. I spent 6 months in Greece. Then I went overland from Greece to India, spent a couple of months in India. And I went to Malaysia and Singapore and Thailand. I spent a month in Bali. And then I came to Australia as well. So I forget what my point was. Okay, maybe it'll come back to me anyway. So anyway, let's just read on a little bit here, and maybe I'll get back on track. One must therefore become strong enough by pleasing the spiritual master, for thus one gets the weapon with which to conquer the enemy, and one also gets the grace of Krishna. Simply getting the weapon of knowledge is insufficient. One must sharpen the weapon by serving the spiritual master and adhering to his instructions. Then the candidate will get the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In general warfare, one must take help from his chariot and horses in order to conquer his enemy. And after conquering his enemies, he may give up the chariot and its paraphernalia. Similarly, as long as one has a human body, one should fully use it to obtain the highest perfection of life, namely going back to home, back to Godhead. Oh yeah. So my overall point was that Krishna consciousness is like a cruise ship. It's so pleasant. Chanting, dancing, taking prasadam, discussing philosophy, and then repeating it. There's nothing unpleasant about the voyage itself, back to home, back to Godhead. One time in Australia, a newspaper reporter asked Prabhupada, "What do you Hare Krishnas do for fun?" And Prabhupada looked quizzically at him. He said, "What did you say?" He said, "What do you Hare Krishnas do for fun?" And Prabhupada said, "It's all fun. I mean, there isn't any part of it that's not fun. It's chanting, dancing. We're like the party religion. No drugs, no alcohol, no illicit sex, no meat eating. But nevertheless, we're up at 4:30, 5:30 in the morning, singing and dancing. Last thing we do before we go to bed is sing and dance. We have big festivals like the Chariot Festival, Festival of Colors, where we involve tens of thousands of other people in singing and dancing, and then eating sumptuous vegetarian feast. And then discussing some philosophy, stimulation for the intellect and the spiritual self." So my point was, I was talking about having traveled for 3 years in all these exotic places, Paris, Canary Islands, Bali, Singapore. But I was always by myself. It was always about me. And if I met travelers, it was about them. It was a lot of ego involved. And you congregate where world travelers congregate, and everyone's pretty much boasting about who they are and where they've been and how their experiences were better. It was, after 3 years of that, I'd become pretty tired of the whole scene. And then I met devotees, And I became a devotee gradually over about 6 months of attending the newly established temple there in Australia. And just by becoming a devotee, so much just fell into my lap. It was amazing. I had joined an international spiritual family of pure people who are aspiring for saintliness. And once I became a devotee, the nature, the complexion of my travels changed completely. Almost anywhere in the world, you could visit the local temple. They would know, oh, Caru from Australia, and they would receive you. Bow down. We bow down to each other out of respect. Say, Jai Prabhu. Prabhu means you're my master. What can I do to serve you? What can I do to serve you? It's reciprocal. And they would give you prasadam. You get a place to stay. So the richest man in the world cannot say the same. The richest man in the world cannot say the same as the most humble devotee. He cannot go to any city in the world and receive a joyful reception, free hugs, a meal and a place to stay, free of charge. Cannot say that. He may stay in the Hilton or Club Med, but he has to pay thousands and thousands of dollars. And were he not able to pay that, they would not be interested in hosting him or having him at all. He would show him the door. As soon as I became a devotee in 1970, it's like I joined this worldwide family. It was so fulfilling, so meaningful to me. And whenever you would travel, you had friends, you had a place to stay, you had food, you had enlivening association. So it was like joining Krishna consciousness was kind of analogously like, boarding a cruise ship. So not only is the goal to go back to that world which is full of light, which is eternal, where the Lord is residing there as Shama Sundar, the witty, loving, 16-year-old, ultimate, beautiful form of the Lord is awaiting his devotees there, where life is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. But it's almost like as soon as you begin to chant Hare Krishna and you visit the local temple, it's almost like you are in the spiritual world already. And going there is a formality. Because the spiritual world is not bounded by geographical limitations, by rivers and mountains. It's not marked out on a map. The spiritual world is wherever there are three elements. Wherever there are these three elements, that is the spiritual world. There is Bhagavan, the supreme enjoyer, supreme proprietor, and the best friend of every living being. And wherever there's bhakta, the part and parcel of the Lord, the sons and daughters of the Lord who are creations of the Lord, who the Lord loves with all of his heart and wants the best for. But it's still incomplete. You can have Bhagavan, you can have bhakta, but until the bhakta makes his or her connection, it's not the spiritual world. And that connection is called bhakti. So when we actively arouse and awaken our devotional service to the Lord in this valuable boat of the human form of life, under the directions of the representative of the Lord, then you have all the three requisite elements for the spiritual world right here and right now. Even in Spanish work, Utah, you have Bhagavan, and he's right there on the altar. You have Bhakta, which is me and aspiring, and you have bhakti, as I sit here and try to explain to you and share with you what I've learned in the Bhagavad Gita, and also recount stories of my experiences as 50 years in being a devotee. That's my service to you, and that's my service to me. So this is the spiritual world. All that can be had as soon as you step over into Krishna consciousness, as soon as you encounter a bona fide spiritual master. And there are so many other points. I have notes here. I thought about it last night, but I haven't even touched the deeper meanings of this. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about it tomorrow, but I've taken up enough of your time. But let me just finish here with a couple of inspirational quotes here from Srila Prabhupada. One who seeks the objective of self-realization is the real student of Bhagavad Gita. One should therefore follow the path of Bhagavad Gita as is expressed in the Gita itself, beware of self-interested people after personal aggrandizement who deviate others from the actual path of self-realization. The Lord is definitely a supreme person. His activities are transcendental. One who understands this is a liberated person from the very beginning of his study of Bhagavad Gita. And we'll finish with a quote from one of our acharyas from the past, Sridhar Swami. He says, "O transcendentally blissful Guru, when my mind finally achieves a place at your lotus feet, all the tiresome labor of my spiritual practices will be finished, and by your mercy I will experience the greatest happiness." And we'll finish with Prabhupada's purport here. The actual process of spiritual freedom is joyfully to perform and has nothing to do with fruitive activities aimed at sense gratification or dry impersonal speculation. More and more people are taking to the process of Krishna consciousness, becoming joyful, and eagerly distributing Krishna's mercy to others. Thus, the whole world will be enlivened and inspired by the Krishna conscious movement, which is the practical demonstration of the mercy of the Vaishnavas. That concludes our time together this morning. I relished it. I hope you did too. I look forward to maybe finishing our discussion tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. MDT. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.